and accommodate trees in the urban environment. So I'm just going to start off with the land acknowledgement. So Heidi and I are in the city of Vancouver, which is on the unceded traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. These lands are the foundation of thousands of years of living culture of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. As we gather for this meeting, we acknowledge with respect that we're joining from where our participants are joining from many places across Canada, and we encourage each of you to take a moment to reflect on the Indigenous peoples whose territory you are situated on today, and to consider your relationship with the land and its original caretakers. So on the agenda today, we're going to talk about urban spaces and how they're so complex, the challenges that we face with getting trees accommodated in urban spaces, and also the challenges we face with managing urban water and implementing green infrastructure. We're going to talk about the changes that we've seen here in kind of like the last half decade and how we're making space and breaking silos between our departments. We're going to talk about some of the solutions with design and then the progress that we've made for trees and the co-benefits. So how GI and street design are sharing benefits. So the city of Vancouver, for anybody who's not familiar, is a municipality located in the region of Metro Vancouver. In this region, there's a bunch of other cities named Vancouver. There's West Vancouver, North Vancouver. We have Burnaby, Richmond. So Vancouver is just one of those municipalities. The city at a glance, Vancouver is actually not that large of a city. It's 115 square kilometers. Compared to Toronto, which is 630 square kilometers, or Calgary, which is 825 square kilometers. However, we are not big in size. We are big in population. So we have the densest population in Canada. So we have a lot of people that we're hosting within our municipalities. So we're always looking to get those people near trees. The climate in Vancouver is mild, and we have plenty of rain for our green rainwater infrastructure engineers to manage throughout the year. And because of our mild hardiness zone, we are also able to grow a large variety of tree species. So just an overview on the urban forest in Vancouver. So as of 2022, our citywide canopy cover is 25%. We have 150,000 street trees, 36,000 trees in our parks. We have 444 hectares of public forests. We have an estimated 325,000 private trees. And most importantly, we have over 300 trees planted in our green infrastructure throughout the city. So our target, the city's target, is to have 30% canopy cover by 2050. And this will be presented on the 20th of this month when we present the 2025 Urban Forest Strategy to our board and council. This contributes to the region's target of 40% by 2050. And in comparison to Seattle, Portland, and Toronto, Vancouver has the highest population density of these cities. So we think that our target is relatively ambitious and likely achievable. One of the unique characteristics of the city of Vancouver is that the urban forests are governed by two elected bodies. So we have the Board of Parks and Recreation, and we also have the City Council, the elected City Council. And so all other municipalities in Canada have a parks branch or department, and Vancouver is the only one with an elected park board. So what the result of this is the management of trees is split between these two governing bodies. However, from speaking from personal experience, staff work through, we work kind of as like one organization, and we aren't as influenced by the bisected governance as some may think. Yeah, so when we're managing trees in these complex urban spaces, we have to do a lot of coordination. So we have the engineering design branch, which is working on designing roadways, sidewalks, electrical, water, sewer pipes, green infrastructure. We have Parks in the streetscape, who's working on managing our urban forest and trees. We have Planning, who's ensuring that we have cohesive land use and development management. And then we also have Transportation, who's overseeing basically how all people move through it all. On top of all this, we have all of our utilities, public works, we have housing, community services. So designing livable, vibrant streets takes a lot of collaboration across many different disciplines. And I would like to emphasize that we take a non-infrastructure focus here, and we try and build spaces in the city of Vancouver that people, nature, and businesses and everything else can thrive. So with relation to tree planting and green infrastructure, on the slide, you can see a list of all of our departments, and then they all these departments have a role in implementing GI and trees in the city. So Urban Forestry Department, the department I work for instance, is selecting tree species. We do total tree care. We're the subject matter experts, we like to think. The department that Heidi is working for designs the projects that provide water and soil volume for trees, sometimes for trees, and managing rainwater. We have streets design, street operations, who are taking care of all sorts of things. But one thing that they do is they help us get cross sections that get trees placed on streets with appropriate soil volume. We have Transportation, electrical, waterworks, building services, BC Hydro, all coordinating with us in creating these streets. So I'll move into our challenges that we face here at the city. So we have many technical challenges. Historically, we've had inadequate soil volumes. I think this is a common situation across many municipalities in Canada. We have maintenance responsibilities. We're trying to figure out who has to do what. We have soil quality issues and many other technical barriers. We also have some poor quality existing standards or dated existing standards. And we have a lot of operational and maintenance coordination that could come a longer way. And then we have parking, traffic, land development, and financial constraints as well. So why is this necessary? Why do trees on older streets often look great? So since the construction of some of our neighborhoods in the 50s and the 60s, compaction in new development has become more stringent, and there's more large development that requires heavier equipment. So we're seeing degradation of soils. And so what we're discovering here in the last couple of decades is that trees can no longer be an afterthought in development, and that we need to be thinking about the condition of the soil that we're planting trees in development. So one thing, this is a common term used in the urban forest industry, is tree coffins. So historically, we've been planting trees in tree coffins. You can see here these images that roots are really bound to these 1.2 by 1.2 meter pit openings that is a standard in Vancouver. In 2019, the engineering design manual introduced soil volume requirements. So we've categorized trees based on large, medium, small, and we've given them a cubic meter value as a requirement, and the average spacing too. So I'll pass it off to Heidi to talk about our underground utilities.
Thanks so much, Reg. Yeah, so a real challenge for the department I work in, which is related to streets, is what already exists underground and the kind of streetscape that you can't see when you pass over the street, but when it's opened up like a photo like this, you understand how complicated it is to make space for trees in our cities. All of these existing utilities are there, and we also have a lot of requirements for offsets from those utilities. Those are preferences that we try to uphold. So it's really a challenge to make the space for the soil volumes and the space generally that Reg mentioned in the last slide. Next slide. And Reg also touched on the fact that there's some dated standards out there. So this particular detail is one that the city relied on for a long time. I mean, it's dated from 2018, and I don't know that we've had a fulsome update of it. So that can be really troublesome because it speaks to the issues that Reg has mentioned. There's a lack of soil volume. Our standards for the tree grates are not up to standards and up to what we understand now. There's no indication here of the trees being able to receive rainwater runoff in the ways that we are able to design them now. We don't have allowances for structural soil or soil cells. Some existing pieces like root barriers will block our structural soil that's part of the new design. And there's other parts of the detail that don't align with our newer understanding of how we prefer to plant trees in the right-of-way. Thanks. And why is it so complicated to plant these trees? Why do we have all of these sort of conflicting rules? Well, from the engineering perspective, there are structural components that we want to maintain in the right-of-way, and that leads to excavation slope preferences, compaction of aggregate that will support the built environment, but doesn't align with what we understand trees need in terms of space and air and root space. So I think a lot of geotextiles have been brought into the designs because of that, but it really does mean that every situation seems to need to be looked at individually. And of course, that's really difficult if you're trying to implement millions of trees as a country. This comes at us daily, this issue. And yeah, so this is a simple plan view of where a tree will sit in the right-of-way. You've got all of the elements of the street here. It looks really easy, but then you go on to what it looks like in when you get to the details, and all of these conflicting requirements are coming at you. So although your street view looks straightforward, you've got to take into account all of these slopes. And as I mentioned, the civil engineering part of the tree planting is probably going to be brought most fully to these situations, and the trees can be feeling like an afterthought, like Reg mentioned. And the differential here, in the earlier slide, we saw a deeper allowance for the root ball, but in this one we have a shallower expression, and this could be in a situation, we have some photos later where we have a more continuous allowance of structural soil. So again, it impacts the specifics for any given situation. So on the next slide, we've got a little bit of a few photos of some of our the work that our crew has done and designed. Now you'll see something unusual here, which is that there's a curb on the inside of the of the practice, and that's not our preferred design. Our preferred design would be to have no curb or no blockage on the inside of the practice, because we want water to flow freely into the practice. But in these circumstances where there were existing trees, those specific trees, it was understood from urban forestry that they would need the support of that curb, because that's how they had been growing all that time. So we take these situations into account, but we are always working together with the foresters in our city to make the best of these situations.
Great. And so we'll chat a little bit about the urban water management and green infrastructure challenges that we also face with a little bit of additional context. So I'll let Heidi jump back in here.
Thanks, Reg. Okay, so from the perspective of water management in the city, we're really trying to embrace what we're calling a one water integrated approach. It's very easy, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later. Like our work areas can tend to get very siloed as we carry on the mandates for each of our business practices. But when you think of the city, of course, all of these elements are related, and particularly around water. Water touches so many elements of the city. So this particular diagram demonstrates that it comes at us in all these ways. And I think one really important thought about our urban trees is that they are our first line of rainwater management. You think of what the canopy and the trees themselves do in terms of uptake of rainwater, it's a really important part of the system. So this just a reminder, I would hope that all the foresters on this call are quite familiar with the water cycle. And I started my career working much more in natural forests, or however we consider them these days, our larger forests in British Columbia. And of course, the natural water cycle was the way we were thinking about these things. And with all of the natural elements of a more natural system, you have water moving through the system, as you see on the right. But what is maybe not appreciated is the urban water cycle, as seen on the left, is really, really different. And that's because we've created so many hard surfaces in our urban environment that we don't have water flowing through the systems in the same way. And this really can lead to a lot of challenges for those natural elements of our cities that rely on a more natural water cycle. Another main driver for us on rainwater management in the city of Vancouver is water quality. This is important to trees, but it's important to everybody in the city and our ecological systems. So it's just a reminder that by keeping rainwater out of our pipes, in a city such as ours, where we have a combined sewer system, it does help to reduce the number of combined sewer overflows that occur. And those are, for those not familiar, situations where in our times of heavy rain, the stormwater joins our sanitary system and can flow into our local waterways untreated. So we are working towards separating these pipes, but we also understand that a lot of green infrastructure elements are a really important part of the solution, because that is our main means of providing water treatment and rainwater treatment before water reaches these waterways. So I just wanted to touch on a particular event that happened in British Columbia, which many of you be familiar with, which was the heat dome in June 2021. So that was a local example for us of an unprecedented and devastating weather event. The temperature soared up to 20 degrees above normal. Many of you may have heard that in Lytton, BC, the highest ever temperature was recorded at 49.6 degrees Celsius on June 29th, 2021. And following that event, the BC Coroner Service confirmed that there had been 619 heat-related deaths, of which 117 were in the city of Vancouver. So this made it the deadliest weather event in Canadian history. Most of these deaths occurred indoors, particularly in neighborhoods that lacked green space, and vulnerable populations, especially those that were age 50 and older who had chronic health conditions, they were disproportionately affected. So what was found was a lot of the housing stock was needed to be looked at more carefully. And one key recommendation of the coroner's report on that heat dome was that municipalities should be protecting and restoring the urban tree canopy and the permeable surfaces that absorb rainwater. So this acknowledged the large role that green infrastructure can play in converting our hard urban surfaces into permeable ones that allow rainwater to soak into the ground and make it more readily available for evaporative cooling and use by the trees. And so you'll see some of the practices that we're trying to mainstream with our partners at Urban Forestry are attempting to bring this practice, this ability to help the trees and support a healthy urban forest bring those practices forward. Yeah, there's some of the stats, yeah, about the heat wave. Right, so what's the connection here? Well, our green infrastructure goals very much are aligned with our urban forestry goals, and particularly we really want to support trees with our green infrastructure by improving our soil moisture, as mentioned, but also trees are the first part of our green infrastructure systems, as I said, so it's a really reciprocal, in a good way, reciprocal relationship. So, you know, between our two teams, we're certainly trying to promote the need to have healthier trees in the urban environment. Just speak about it with one voice as we go through these different planning exercises that Reg kind of spoken about, and let everyone know why it is important to save and allocate urban space for these kinds of trees. So because of the drivers that you've seen around climate change, extreme weather events, the growth of our city, aging infrastructure, the city adopted the Rain City strategy in 2019 to take a really progressive and approach to using more green infrastructure. And we put out there a target of having 40% of our city's impervious area managed by green infrastructure by 2050. It's going to be quite a jump. This particular chart just tells us how much we anticipate to add to our green infrastructure inventory over the next 30 years, sorry. And you'll see that we're emerging. We have made great gains in the infrastructure that we've been implementing, but we have a long ways to go as well. And we see in every practice that we deliver the importance of the existing trees, adding new trees, and supporting the existing street canopy and the gains that we hope for with our urban forestry partners.
Great, thanks so much. So I'm going to jump into our section 4, so the turning point, and how we've broken down some silos between our departments to make some space for trees. So we come across institutional problems where it's difficult to implement some of our GI because of policies. But in 2023, we had a UBC student, Elliot Bellis, did some research on our trees and streets and the performance of them with focus on sidewalk conditions. The recommendations that Elliot produced have been really meaningful for our street design. What really helped move the design policy forward was the sense that we had an external researcher who could offer a neutral, unbiased input, something that's harder to get from staff who already have kind of like tied in priorities to a lot of our policies. One thing that was a bonus to doing this, having a researcher from UBC join in, was that it's also a bit of a low-cost option with a big-time bonus. So in general, we saw the research found that trees are in a better condition when they're near GRI. I think that could have been expected because they have much more soil. 95% of the trees near GRI or in GRI were in good or better condition, while the city average is at 88%. And then the most common types of GRI that we have trees in are permeable concrete pavers, bioretention bulges, and bioswales. And so the recommendations from this research were to implement and adopt a tree program, which we have done. So we have residents now adopting trees and watering trees. Improve the streetscape. So one of the big recommendations was to make boulevards 2 meters rather than 1.2 meters, which is a big change for a city that's so dense, to follow our soil volume requirements and to improve our tree pits. There are also a few other recommendations related to equity, tree health, and how it's good for preventing heaving of sidewalks. And one of the recommendations was to form a working group. So what we've done here in the last couple of years is we've formed the Street Tree Working Group, which has these six departments involved. I was about to say characters, but we're all characters in our own right. And then we call in other departments as needed to solve issues. So we have green infrastructure who's implementing that. We have our street operations, urban forestry. We have the city design studio who's creating the cross sections for our streets, and then street design and development planning who are largely involved with the implementation of streets as well. So the solutions that we've come up with, designing with trees in mind, we've had, this is a slide that I've shown before. So these are the list of conflicts that we're really dealing with, and this group has been addressing. And through this group, we found many ways to work through these conflicts. And we use the group as a kind of like a solution-oriented think tank for any problem that comes up. There's lots of solutions that have been found by just synergies with GRI and tree planting that have also helped with operations and maintenance of our streets. And the next slide actually shows a summarization of the solutions that we've been working up to date. So I'll actually let Heidi jump in again to talk about some of these.
Thanks, Reg. I have to say this has been a really invigorating group to be part of at the city because we've just through, like, as Reg mentioned, by having this report commissioned from an outside source, it really activated everyone to feel like, yeah, there are things we could do about this. So by meeting monthly, it's been a roundtable where we are very solutions focused. So, you know, we've made our list here on the left of, you know, these challenges that we've been facing. And by having our multidisciplinary working group, we've been able to move things ahead much more quickly because at that group, as you can see on the right, we've been able to arrive at technical solutions and, you know, try them. And because we've had everybody there, it's not simply operations kind of saying, what are you guys thinking about these tree grates? Like, this is not working. We're there together for the conversations and understanding how and we can move them ahead. So that is this. Yeah, no, that's good. So we've again on sort of another way that we're trying to talk about moving things forward more quickly is just getting it socialized, why there's an importance for 2 meter minimum boulevards. Reg, this is your baby. I might let you say a few things about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like so when the recommendation was made for 2 meter minimum boulevards, yeah, we just found that, you know, sidewalks aren't getting damaged in 2 meter minimum, trees are growing, water's becoming soaked into the earth. All of the things that we want to happen are happening, and people are happier. It's more accessible in the public realm. So, but this is a big change for a city that is already limited on space. So it's been an interesting challenge. And I think the trick with the group is that everybody can see the net benefit of a change like this and can bring it back to their respective department and just explain it in a way that shows the benefits to everybody in the city, especially our engineering departments. So we'll jump into a few examples of our successes. And so I'll let Heidi jump in here with a bunch of great GRI information.
Thanks, Reg. Yes. Okay. So one really highlight of our installations to date as a green infrastructure branch has been the 8-block system, blue-green system, we call it, on Richard Street in downtown Vancouver. So blue-green systems are larger scale networks of connected park-like streets that are designed to manage and the land and the water in a way that mimics natural processes. So in a heavily urbanized environment like this, there's a lot of competition for street space. You remember that utility photo earlier, and just I'm sure any of you working in cities understand this is a real challenge. This particular project uses rainwater tree trenches under and permeable pavement to capture and clean the rainwater. And it also uses a smaller footprint that makes it a good GI solution where space is constrained. So another big feature of this particular system was that over 100 new street trees were planted. Plus they were by being adjacent to the bikeway, the rainwater tree trenches were put underneath them, providing more soil and water volume for them as they go. These trees also, of course, were part of, I guess, one of the more tree deficit areas, the city. Reg tells me that this was an amazing canopy now because there's actually 5 rows of trees. We've got front boulevard, back boulevard, and the trees you can see there next to the Moby bike station, adjacent to the bikeway. So
that image actually doesn't
yeah.
show it all, but there's some blocks that are pretty incredible down there.
Yeah, which is really interesting in an urban area. Make sure you see it if you're in Vancouver. So on the next slide, we just got this plan. Yeah, this is how a rainwater tree trench works. It takes that water off of the street and directs it to a catch basin, which is then directed into the structural soil or the soil cell where extra volume of soil has been provided, and the moisture is able to collect there for the roots of the trees. Really something that we've been using more and more of in the urban environment. And on our next slide, we have a few plans of what that can look like. As I mentioned, we do use on the left, these are soil cells that would would have some kind of structure underneath the ground. There's some proprietary names for them like silvacells, but we're also finding that simply using the structural soil, which is just soil that's been graded to have a fair amount of larger sized, a variety of the cobbles within the structure to meet our needs for the compaction, but also having lots of airspace and pore space for water and to travel through. And yeah, so here's a nice example from Richard Street of what construction looked like over time. And this might be something for you to appreciate. On the left, you can see the native soils that were uncovered when the project was done, or they might be a fill. Actually, you can see the utility on the left from the fill, the difference in color. And then here's a continuous soil cell installation that you can see coming to fruition on the right. You know, a variety of soils are used in addition to the cobbles you can see there, so that there'll be nutrition available for the trees in the longer run. And the final form comes to life on the right, covered in these permeable pavers that allow water to travel down from the surface, as well as the larger tree pits that were part of the project. In plan view, I think the top, yes. So on the top of this detail from the design is what the plan view looks like. And we've got that continuous trench, which is really important. And you can see on the bottom in section how those challenges around like grade changes, etc., were dealt with by the designers to come to the best solution that would provide a lot more space for the trees. Yes. Oh, yes. I already let the cat out of the bag, but the 5 rows of trees is a really nice aspect of this particular project. And we understand that with this 100 new trees, we've got a really great carbon sequestration value, 50,000 kilograms over the life of the project. All kinds of rainwater management is being done as well. And in this one, we particularly we also are monitoring soil moisture. So our group has a dedicated monitoring team, and we are taking advantage of the fact that we have some before data on these situations, and to put in long-term sensors and measure a lot of the effects and the characteristics as we go. Okay, so yeah, Reg mentioned that these foresters, you might not be totally familiar with how we do this work, but this is an example of, again, of a long trench that would be structural soil being put in place to support the street trees that were coming into this bioretention asset. So it just gives you an appreciation of how that's put in place. And our team spends a lot of time with different contractors and our internal crews to make sure that this is done correctly, because that's really important to the success of the trees and the vegetation in the longer term. Okay, yes, here Homer Street is another very urban downtown street for us. And it also has the extra challenge of having quite a steep grade. So we wanted to just give you this visual to appreciate that we can account for that. And the use of weirs in our systems is becoming more commonplace, and we've been experimenting with different designs. So you can see on the left, that's pretty clear that the weirs are in place to slow the water down, hold it back, reduce the flow rate, which is very helpful. And it prevents erosion and some of the concerns about through flows that could happen without that kind of structure to account for those grade changes. Okay, and yeah, I think this might be one of our last slides on examples, and just wanted to highlight one of our recent showcase projects is certainly the St. George Rainway. It's another blue-green system that's been put in place in the Fairview Slopes area of our city, or Mount Pleasant, I suppose. And again, it has a lot of grade change, but this was really has been a really successful project because of the neighbors who really came up with the idea from the beginning. Because back in 2008, a group of neighbors came together and wanted to daylight the stream. They wanted to really pay honor to the former stream that had flowed in the neighborhood. In the city of Vancouver, most of our natural streams, with the exception of two, were put into pipes when the city was developed in like the 30s and 40s. And it has meant that we have very little natural streams left in the city. So in this project, you know, to daylight the stream would have been not possible because of the way that the city had developed around it over time. But our team came up with a design in conjunction with a lot of public engagement with the neighbors and the city as a whole to have an expression like this that is an echo of the stream that once was. So here you can see again the weirs, and on this, when the 4 blocks are done for the entire system, there'll be over 35 new street trees included in that. And again, the carbon sequestration will be part of that, the urban cooling, and the shade and aesthetic benefits that we haven't really talked about at all, but we understand to be really important, how much it contributes to people's well-being and their health, just to be in the presence of trees and to see them from where they live, and to be able to be near a tree in short order. Our team understands that as well, and it's another reason why we're so passionate to support our city's urban trees as we go forward.
Thanks so much, Heidi. So I'd just like to say thanks, Heidi, for joining in last minute. This morning we had Nick originally, and so Heidi is handling a bunch of information that wasn't initially on her plate. So looking forward, our group is going to work on clarifying roles so we know exactly how operations and maintenance responsibilities will be divvied up between our departments. And this will hopefully add longevity to our assets and lead to a better streetscape. We're looking to improve our communication and implementing updated standards and practices so we can share these with everybody who would ever use them to build our streets. So we're working on updating our engineering design manuals, integrating structural soil and soil cells into our best practices, and improving these things as well in our development permit conditions. And then finally, we're looking to pilot new retrofits for trees near existing GI, or implement GI near existing trees, and also build GI in a way that is the best for our trees in our city. So I think we're ready for our questions now. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Reg and Heidi, for that great presentation. Before we move on to the questions, I'm going to launch a quick post-webinar survey. There are 2 questions, so if you just scroll down, you'll see the second question. And right after that, we'll go into our Q&A.
Okay.
Just one moment. As we get more and more people filling out the survey, I just wanted to remind you that if you've posted a question in the chat, it'd be great if you could move it to the Q&A pod, just to keep things easier. All right, I think we can move on now. So I'm going to close the poll. All right. So would it help if I read the questions out to you guys?
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, perfect. So first we have Laura. She's asking, does UBC use the 2-meter boulevard standards? And also, what trees were planted on Richards Street?
I can't comment on the policies and standards that UBC uses. UBC is a separate governance entity from the city of Vancouver, so I don't know what their construction policies are. And then the trees that were planted in the GI on Richards were 2 different species. So we used a river birch variety. I think it's called the Durahit cultivar, which has been cultivated for growing in urban spaces. And then we also used Carpinus caroliniana because the places where we planted the Carpinus had quite a bit of shade because of all the existing trees on the existing boulevard and private side.
Perfect, thank you. Then Jen Miles has asked, how is perforated pipe maintenance planned to be managed in the rainwater tree trenches? They've heard concerns that pipe will fill with sediments and lose functionality over time. So is there any plan to clean the pipe out?
I can take that one. Yeah, certainly we have a dedicated operations and maintenance program with our green infrastructure, and that includes the flushing of the pipes for our rainwater tree trenches. We build them with cleanouts so that is possible, and we track their condition, and it's definitely part of the plan to flush them at times.
Perfect, thank you. So, and as mentioned, thanks for a very interesting talk. Most of the trees planted in Vancouver streets are broad-leaved. The lack of coniferous trees planted, does that create any challenges?
Yeah, I'll take that. So I don't think it creates challenges. I think we actually have challenges with broadleaf trees that have very large leaves, and they can clog up some of the drainage that would be used to get water into these systems. As far as having conifers on our boulevards, there seems to be this kind of anecdotally, but there seems to be an overarching preference for deciduous trees on our boulevards, because Vancouver, if you've lived in Vancouver or spent time in Vancouver in the winter, it can be very dark. So solar access is pretty important to a lot of the residents. However, we have been trying to implement more conifer trees in areas where solar access isn't as important. So in industrial areas and areas where people aren't calling home.
Okay, thank you. John Mills is wondering, any issues with the water quality from street runoff in terms of damage to street trees or rain gardens?
I'll take that one. And Reg might have some more tree specific feedback, but we absolutely design the GI with this quality of water in mind. And so the plants and vegetation that are put in place are meant to be able to withstand the kinds of pollutants that are in the runoff. So no, that hasn't been something that is of concern, because we designed for that. And then I think that's related to the next question. I'm just jumping ahead, but speaking to the toxification of soil and the effects on the vegetation, it seems like there's a lot of pollutants in an urban setting, but I don't think you touched on this. It's true. But we understand that and design for that to be concentrated at these rain gardens. And honestly, the data over time from because GI has been used for decades, it does not really indicate that these become like mini contaminated sites or anything like that, because the soil and the plants are able to fix and do treatment of the pollutants. Regardless, we understand it to be a good thing to have them in a space where we like collected in one place, rather than just continuing to be diffused into the environment. And if needed, at the time of renewal of these the assets, we would remove the soil and test it. If it needed to be taken to landfill, that's what would happen as we go along. But Reg, I don't think that. Yeah,
I could add in just one thing. I know that's a common issue for street trees is salt. And we don't get we don't apply as much salt as other municipalities across Canada, because we don't get that much snow. We have a ton of rain, so that flushes out our systems of salt quite easily. So we haven't really had many issues with salt damage to trees in GI. It hasn't really come up, but I know it could be an issue in places like Toronto, for instance.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. So Jen Miles is wondering that our parks team has not seen good results in using only structural soil. Have you seen beneficial applications? For example, a limited percentage of structural soil used with a soil cell.
So we do have some designs that would be like a hybrid design, where we're in the immediate proximity of the tree, there would be soil cell, and then on the outside of the proximity or the area of soil cells, we would have structural soil. Vancouver is interesting. We have our own specially designed structural soil that uses a 2 to 3 inch angular cobble, whatever. So it gives us about 43% soil volume per unit of soil volume. And we have actually had quite good success. It's one thing, we've seen tree performance in structural soil benefit, but what we've really seen is we've seen sidewalk performance in structural soil benefit, because we're having deeper roots. We're not having roots chasing the little bits of soil that are coming through the cracks in the sidewalk or the joints of the sidewalk.
Okay, thank you for that. So someone's asking, have you looked into partnering with companies that quantify nature exposure with health outcomes? It seems like the only thing policymakers understand is money. We've had better success linking our projects to the cost saving in mental health prescription and reduction in diabetes, amongst other things.
that's great to hear.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting topic. We haven't done any comprehensive studies quantifying the benefits of public health to trees recently. And I know, however, I know that we do have a department in our planning sustainability department that is looking into these types of studies. So I think just yeah, keep your ear out. We might have some information on that.
Yeah, I would totally agree that it's certainly gets a lot more uptake when we can talk about these co-benefits and the value of them, which we haven't always done, I think, successfully. Like we're really good at costing out a capital project for, you know, all the elements that we talked about today, but to talk about the benefits of it, so that we kind of have that on the same balance sheet. We haven't had easy ways to do that. And I think part of it is that it's a little bit maybe controversial to kind of put a price on what it means to us to have these natural systems in our midst. But I'd say that I think there's groups that are really working hard on this, because they see that if you don't give something a value, it gets a value of 0. So I'm just going to put a little link in the chat to something I've worked on. It is kind of US centric, but it's a pretty comprehensive set of resources that bring that value piece into considering these natural systems, or naturalized systems, I should say.
And I think the heat dome really illuminated this for the city of Vancouver, how important it is. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. Very important point. So William is saying, I'm curious why you place pavers between trees in many locations rather than garden beds, for example, or bioswales. They can't see any plausible reason. Even if it were grass, more water would make it through the roots, for example, and they'd be able to breathe better.
I can't disagree, but and Reg probably has so many calls about this. Our group gets it too. It's the complaints that we receive when the surfaces, especially in the highly urbanized environment, are failing, which can be the case in somewhere like Richards that you saw the photos of, where, you know, there's quite tall buildings and the solar impact will be quite low. We tend to have, and then when there's a lot of foot traffic, we tend to get complaints about that condition. So that's what I would offer. I mean, those pavers are permeable, so, you know, they are quite different than asphalt, obviously, or even traditional landscape pavers. They are designed for infiltration, but you're not wrong. And I don't know, Reg, if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Having that, like, I mean, an open grass area is better permeability than an area with permeable pavers. But the function of the space is important to recognize as well. So on Richard Street, there's parking along the side of those permeable pavers. So as people get out of their cars, they have to step on a solid surface for accessibility reasons. So that, I think that's a primary reason we have that there as well.
Okay, that's a great point. And William actually had another question that's related. So they asked, can you speak to how Vancouver is doing on car parking? It takes up so much valuable space, but removing it often requires huge political capital. Paris has made great progress on this and set ambitious targets and more, but they don't know the situation in Vancouver.
Controversial.
Yeah.
So, and I just spoke about this yesterday, that, you know, I think like we're a community that wants green. We are always at those high level plans, like our Vancouver plan, our urban forest plan. Like, we get a lot of support for those things from residents. But when it comes to people's block and it arrives and we say the geometry is changing here and we're taking back road space to allow for these other things, there can be a lot of pushback. And so I'd say that we're trying to advance our engagement for that reason, to kind of help people along, do a better job of communicating what those advantages and what the benefits are going to be.
Yeah, and I think the only part I would add to that with regard to parking is one thing that we do with planning in the city is we prioritize streets based on their use. So parking isn't as big of a priority in our green network compared to a residential street. So that would change the way that we construct the street. For instance, if it's meant to be a green network and a bikeway, we probably wouldn't prioritize parking on that street.
Okay, fair enough. This flows into our next question by Laura, who asks, when you started working on the Richard Street project, did you get much pushback from residents?
Wasn't here at that time, or at least I didn't work on the project in that way. It's a good question, but I think it kind of speaks to what we just said. Like, there'll be advocates, there will be folks that you know, are really resistant to these changes. And so engagement is a really important part of that process. Yeah, certainly at our St. George Rainway, where we're going to do like large block closures, there was many meetings with residents. And I think, as Reg said, what's been really helpful is for staff to feel confident in looking at these detailed plans that we make for the city, to kind of explain why we're making a particular choice on one block or not another. But yeah, that's probably helpful to keep in mind. Do not leave it too late in the process. Those inputs and those communications as early as possible are really important.
Thank you. So we just have a few more questions. So the next one is this one is by Greg Pawson. Obvious advancements in urban forestry in Vancouver. Great positive strides in managing green infrastructure. Once your infrastructure is in place, how do you deal with nutrient monitoring and management? For example, fertilization requirements.
Yeah, so we don't typically fertilize our trees. We use a soil blend that has a certain percentage of organics to support the initial tree growth and just create suitable growing conditions for trees. Organics still reach some of these systems in the form of leaves and other just decaying plant matter. However, yeah, we don't do any fertilization of trees in the Vancouver Park Board. It's never been one of our O&M items.
Well, yes, so perhaps the trees that are in GI systems will be able to benefit from our use of compost. So for not every system, but you know, like we have less assets than the urban forest group, and we do monitor we'll take soil samples and to understand like what the soil condition is, and we will add compost teas at times. Reg is like,
Oh,
really?
I'm discovering all this now. That's actually really exciting.
Yeah. So we do have some means to add nutrition and to the systems as needed.
Perfect. Thank you. So Greg Staniford is asking, is it difficult to hit soil volume targets for large canopy trees in GI? What strategies are you using to accommodate large canopy trees?
I would say in general, it's difficult to hit soil volume targets for a large size tree. So for a single large size tree, we want 30 cubic meters of soil. So we have to fit that between the curb and the property line. And that's proven to be quite difficult. However, when we're able to meet these, when there's situations where there aren't constraints with underground utilities and all of the other things that could potentially conflict with soil, we utilize structural soil or soil cells. I'll let Heidi add anything.
I guess that, yeah, it's something that we do on a case-by-case basis, and we do our best to kind of trade off what is needed, and it can be hard. But I think that we just generally try to optimize the design for the situation. Yeah.
All right. And last but not least, Stuart Lacey is asking, given the challenges with existing standards, are there other cities that Vancouver looks to for inspiration or that stand out as an exemplary model in this area?
I don't know. I think, Reg, there's probably cities around the world that we've been studying. I don't know if I can name any specifically right now. on that?
Yeah, I can't think of a specific. I know maybe Nick would know something like this, but I like what our challenges are, like getting like soils and utilities in the same space. And I'd say that's probably the biggest gap of our existing standards is we haven't we don't construct things with, you know, both electrical, water and sewer within a system that tree roots can also grow in. And so, you know, those are our gaps. Cities that have standards that allow for those things would be the standards that we would look to, I would say,
Yeah.
coming from an urban forestry perspective.
I think that we've seen some like cities that have been doing this for longer, like New York City and Philadelphia in the US, are a couple of places where I think we've kind of through that, as mentioned, I'm part of this Green Infrastructure Leadership Exchange. That's a place where practitioners come together and share kind of lessons learned, and those are a couple of cities that have been doing this kind of thing for a long time. But I'm not sure on the urban forest side, you know, that we've seen that anyone has a silver bullet on it. So we've just been kind of moving through it ourselves. And as mentioned earlier, you know, working in our working group has probably been one of the places that we've resolved things the most effectively. So I guess with that, it's like, hey, just take it on. If it's something that's in your purview, reach out to those colleagues of yours that are aligned, that are values aligned. I think that's why we've just, like, that was what Elliot's report really helped us all say. Of course, we all want the urban canopy to thrive. Like, if we just come to the table with that as our kind of mandate and our like guiding principle, then we've been able to move a lot of things forward.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Reg and Heidi, for that wonderful presentation. And also thank you, Kaylee, for being here and for all your help. If any of our audience have any questions, feel free to reach out via email. With that, I am going to close that session. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.